I'm David Adler. Welcome to this special Time Center BizBash discussion on connecting at a distance, solutions for gathering now. Since March 2020, the business of events has been rocked, and the disruption of the pandemic has changed the industry forever. As we begin to adapt and evolve, everyone wants to know what strategies and solutions are going to help event professionals survive. What can event producers count on as they prepare for their budgets for 2021? What best practices will help us safely reopen venues for in-person and hybrid experiences? Please join me in discussion with 8 fellow travelers. Amber Guild, the president of T-Brand at the New York Times, on how the iconic New York Times will share how her team has been creating compelling and reimagining experiences that make storytelling come to life in all new ways. From Fred Dixon, the president and CEO of NYC & Company, we will get a sense of what it was like to be on the front lines of the crisis. Now he is a key leader in envisioning how to bring New York City back to make it, like, once again, a shining example of what is best about an American city. We will get a global perspective from Kelly Easterling, the chief creative officer of Quantum Creative Studios and We Make Events, who is creating the next generation of event thinking. Phil Himberg, the executive director, and David Macy, the resident director of the famous artist residence program MacDowell, will share how they re-engineered a safe, live, live-in experience and even increase their reach via new digital channels. Carmen Jones, the experiential director and growth lead at Essence Communications, will give us some insights on how her brand served her community with compelling and valuable content. Glenn Rabbach, the SVP and president of sales at Duggal Creative Solutions, has been rethinking how venues and brands use visual communication tools to make sure that the safety messaging is effective. And Shaun, the vice president of sales at Great Performances, will describe the new world of food and beverage and how these experiences are changing before our eyes. Our goal today is to share information and start important conversations as we all reinvent our future together. So let's get started.
I think that we should start off, though, with both Fred and Kelly. Fred, talk about, people don't understand what NYC & Company really is. And I've been involved in it for years, and the leadership impact of the organization is pretty incredible, that you basically are the mayor of our side of the business. You know, you're the mayor for us in our industry. And how do you represent us and what's going on? And then Kelly, I wanted you to talk about your business and how it interacts with the event business, because you're doing a lot of things that have design thinking and event thinking, and how it translates together. So Fred, why don't you start with how NYC & Company has this leadership role in the city?
Thank you very much, David. And it's so good to be with you both. And David, you've certainly been with us through crisis over the many years, and especially after 9/11. So thank you for all you've done for New York.
Thank you so much.
Huge advocate for this industry. So NYC & Company is the official tourism and partnership organization for the city of New York. And when we say tourism, we mean the entire ecosystem of travel and tourism, including events. And of course, events bring so much of the vibrancy to New York City and the global spotlight. So I'm grateful for this opportunity.
And when you say events, you're also meaning meetings and expos and conferences and
absolutely, corporate activations, absolutely the broad stroke of the events world, right? And New York City is an international hub for events. It is a critical pathway for us. So right after the crisis began, we were monitoring it from the early days. As you know, China has become a very big market for New York. It's our number 2 market after the UK in normal times. So we were monitoring the early sort of fallback in the Chinese business before we really knew that the virus was really coming into America. And so we had been sort of activated. Our crisis management team went into effect in February. And so by the time the pandemic really began to lock down and really began to expand here in the US, we began to pull together our leadership. So as you recall, and you were part of the after 9/11 for New York Rising, which was our coalition at that time. So we stood up the new version of New York Rising, which is the Coalition for Hospitality and Tourism Recovery. We don't have such a catchy name this time. But we brought back our 3 former chairmen, and that's John Tisch, Tim Zagat, and Emily Rafferty. They came back into the fold right away, tapped leaders of industry, including Danny Meyer, Thelma Golden at the Studio Museum, Peter Ward from the Hotel Union. Everyone came together to put the best minds back into the game to think about what recovery could look like for New York. So it has been, like for everyone, it's been a tumultuous ride over the past 6 months. The coalition published the roadmap for recovery for New York City called All In, the roadmap for tourism's reimagining and recovery, because it is as much about
Where can people find that to see that if they wanted to get more?
Thank you, absolutely. So if you go to nycgo.com/recovery, you'll find everything there. The coalition is there, including its leadership, and the roadmap document is there to be downloaded.
And anybody that does business in New York City could gain knowledge from that to answer a lot of questions, because there's a lot of questions everywhere.
Absolutely, and that's been one of the key activities for us, is really communicating. Right, in a crisis, you communicate, and you'll find a lot of detail in that roadmap. I think the team did a remarkable job of putting it together. But if you need more information, you can always reach out to anyone at NYC and Company, and we'll be happy to help connect dots.
Kelly, why don't you talk a little about what your organization does, and then we'll sort of connect all the dots here.
Sure. Well, my company works with a lot of the same folks that work in the event and entertainment industry, and in particular Broadway. So where we might work on permanent installations or more global installations, we pull from that community of designers and talent and producers that are working in the event industry, and a lot of that comes from the need to tell a story, right? So the work that we do is really about telling a story. It's about being creative, and so we pull from that creative community, and so it's really important to us that they stay healthy.
But you tell a story in a different way. You're still telling a story using experiential.
Sure.
As your
Sure.
modality for it in many cases. Right?
Well, and it's the same thing that we do with events in a lot of ways, right? So when we talk about creating an experience, we talk about, what's the difference between creating an experience and going to a Broadway show? And we're going to talk, the Broadway shows not in
we're
a
going to get
sense,
into all
of
this.
Generally speaking, we like to give the audience a role to play. We like to give them a reason to be there, right? Some sort of purpose for existing. And so, when we pull from this kind of diverse community of creative and technical people who are really good at doing that kind of work, understanding what that means, we're more successful in creating a really genuine experience for the audience. And so when we start talking about events and building events, we want to create really inspiring events. We want to create events that are valuable, right?
We talked about that especially now,
right?
Events have to be more valuable, because you don't want to come to an event that's going to kill your grandmother.
Right.
You got to make sure that it's really important.
Right. Well, and we have
safe.
to make it, and we have to give people a reason to want to be there.
Yeah. More than ever now.
More than ever now, and so it's incumbent upon us as event producers and as entertainment producers and Broadway producers to find a way to make our audiences feel comfortable, but also allow them again to drop their inhibitions and to enjoy their experience. How do we protect that time, right? How do we protect that sacred experience that we have with them, that sacred agreement, that pact that we have with our audience, where we say, come on in, have this experience, participate in this event, and we've done what we can, everything that we can, to make this a safe experience for you so you can participate in a safe way.
Okay, so now let me go to Fred, because Fred is responsible for making sure it's safe in some ways, because he's got the community at heart. How are we enabling people to feel comfortable and enjoy these experiences? What is going on in terms of the concrete steps that we're taking? Yeah,
absolutely. And it's been interesting. Of course, New York has gone from really the epicenter of the American, viral experience to now really one of the safest places in the country. We're closely watching these new outbreaks in Brooklyn and Queens, of course. But New Yorkers, have high mask compliance. I think, it's remarkable the skills and talent in our healthcare community, our essential workers and frontline workers that have all come together to make New York as safe as it has become over the past many weeks, certainly from where we were in the spring. So one of the elements we know, and you both just spoke to it, in recovering the business is confidence, right? And it's confidence in safety, it's confidence in knowing that your partners are trusted in their behaviors. We stood up very early on in the process this summer, what we call the NYC Stay Well Pledge, and it really is a two-way just communication. It's just a reminder. The governor and the mayor are giving us all of the safety protocols. The health commissioner is laying out what needs to be done. We're reminding the community and visitors, right, that are engaging with businesses that they have a role to play in this as well. It's a two-way commitment. We're going to take all the necessary precautions to keep you safe as a business, but you also are incumbent to wear your mask and respect the distancing rules and to play along so that we all can get back to business safely. So reminding visitors about that is really important.
Do you think, though, that, I hear it every day from the 12 million people that are impacted in our industry about this, that the theater's empty right now. We haven't come back to a place where it's even financially viable to run a business. And you see businesses struggling every single day with the Washington not really reacting as well. What is this person that's watching this who is sort of struggling, saying, oh yeah, it's great to have all of these feelings and features and everything else, but what's happening? And how could we get to the point where this place is filled up, or at least filled up safe enough so that we can have a business?
Absolutely.
And run our event industry.
We're all yearning for that moment. And you're absolutely right. You can have the best marketing plans in the world, the best promotions, and the best safety procedures, but if the American public and the global audiences don't feel safe, the demand is not going to return. And that's certainly the case that we're seeing here in the United States. You're seeing some rural destinations that are beginning to do moderately well as people that are confident enough to get out. We're certainly seeing that amongst younger generations. They are a little bit less risk averse for good or for bad, and are probably going to help lead this recovery in some way. But we have to restore their confidence. And right now, and this is not a political statement, but the lack of a national strategy is really impeding us. And you certainly see that in the big cities, not just New York, but you're seeing it in Boston and in Chicago and Philadelphia and in San Francisco, the same challenges. And the American traveler, certainly, and I'm only speaking about them because the international borders are largely closed right now, is really reluctant to get back out on the road in significant ways. And certainly, they have their skepticism when it comes to events and gatherings. So we have to get our story together. We have to show them how we are restoring confidence. We have to also measure the sentiment of our audience. Just standing up an event is not enough. And so we have to help rebuild confidence really from the ground up.
And when you say rebuild confidence, as somebody that's watching this, your job is to watch this and be part of it. What are the signs that you're going to see that'll say, like I've heard that when sports comes back, we'll come back. Like, what is the roadmap that we should be looking at to know that there's at least hope? Because I think we've got to sell hope more than anything right now, because people know that it's too dangerous to just jump right in.
Yeah, I think.
But what do you see?
Yeah, so it's hard to predict, right? I've been looking for that crystal ball. I think
we want you to have the crystal ball.
I would love to have it. I would love to have it. I'm looking for it. I think it's pretty clear, that we're going to have to get past this election cycle for one thing. I think everyone is, just sort of holding their breath to get through the fall in many ways. It's such a challenge, one from a marketing perspective, breaking through. But I think just overall, people are also waiting to see what's going to actually happen with the vaccine. I think that is going to weigh heavily into decision making. So we're really looking into 21 as the best opportunity. We're doing everything we can now to stimulate business within the tri-state area, within the local market. The quarantines are inhibiting people from really traveling into New York broadly as designed. So encouraging corporations to do events here in our own city. You can't go, take that corporate retreat away, or you can't do that activation somewhere, but you can do events here in New York. We're doing an event today here at the New York Times building. So we are pulling on the civic duty of event organizers to do things in NYC now, as you can. But the signs that we're looking for in terms of, really, you can look at all the travel metrics you want, and we've been measuring those as well, looking to see when are airline bookings going to return, what are searches looking like online when it comes to either delegates or it's leisure travelers, and business travel also is a leading indicator. We're really watching closely what corporate America is doing about returning the workers to the office. That it really is going to be one of the key factors, because if workers aren't returning to the office, they're certainly not going to be going on business trips, and that's really going to impact the event industry.
After 9/11, one of the things that surprised me was the power of the exhibition business. and that was a mountain compared to everything else. Is that still the case?
I think
still being driven by that?
I think so too. I mean, if you recall after 9/11, one of our strategies was to attract big events to New York to show the world that the city was safe. And two of the first ones that we were able to land, of course, was the Republican National Convention, which wasn't a slam dunk for New York. And the city came together to make that happen. And then, of course, we had the Grammys that came to New York as well. So those two big events really helped shape. I'm sorry, not the Grammys, the Country Music Awards. Country Music Awards. Those two.
The Grammys were the next year or something.
Grammys were right after that. Yeah, Country Music Awards were a big game changer. They'd never been to New York, and it was perception shifting, not only showing that New York is safe, but also that New York is friendly and welcoming. And it was a big boom for us.
And how does Kelly, we're looking at the impact of this COVID crisis on the experience. How is the experience going to change? And also, how are we going to afford the changes that the experience is demanding? Because the economics are changing dramatically. How does someone that's listening who has an event industry company know how to make a profit?
Well, I think there's no question that we're going to have to approach event production in a whole different way, and I'll agree with Fred in that I don't think there's going to be a moment where someone's going to drop a flag and we're going to say, okay, it's good to go, we're ready to go, and so I don't think we're going to see that happen, but we are seeing some signs of life. For instance,
please tell. We want to see signs of
for
life.
instance, I just attended an event at the Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey, in New Jersey, where they've produced an outdoor series of experiences and shows, which is what they do well, and they've been very thoughtful about their approach. But one of the challenges that they faced was, how do they tell their audience? How do they communicate with their audience? To kind of jump off of what Fred was talking about, we're challenged now with finding a way to communicate with our audience in advance that this experience is going to be safe, that we've thought about it, that we've done the homework to give them a safe experience.
What does that messaging
confidence
look like? If you're king of the world, and you can say to your audience, you have the list, the people. What do you tell them? Is it that nobody's going to be sick in the audience? How do you communicate?
Well, I don't think you can say that, right? I mean, I don't think you can. No. But I think we start with the understanding that people want to come to these things.
Right.
People want this experience. Right? People want to have this experience, and they're missing it, right? They're yearning for it.
But Fred, is that good for us as
yes.
the city? The pent-up demand.
Yeah, there's no question.
Create a spike.
I was on a call yesterday, and someone described it as a coiled spring, ready to be sprung. And there's no question there's enormous pent-up demand. But Kelly's right. There isn't going to be a moment where a flag is going to drop.
Right.
I mean, the recovery, I think, is going to be gradual, but it's going to be certain. I mean, we're certain that there will be a strong rebound, but it will be a build. There's no question.
Well, we all lived through not 9/11, but 2008 and 2009 that didn't end until 2011.
Right. Right. Exactly.
For most of us, so we're used to really severe use and recovery. But the cost of doing an event is going to change. What do you do to make the event cost effective? Where do you trim, or where do you add, or do you charge more? What's going to be the solution? And
I think it becomes a clever balance between how you protect a valuable experience for your guest and for your audience, right? How do you continue to make that a valuable experience for them, and still maintain a profitable business plan?
Bottom line, prices are going to go up.
Yeah.
You're going to have to charge more money. People are going to want to value these more. The ticket prices in Broadway are crazy to begin with, and they're going to have to go up because you're going to have to, right?
Correct.
And so are we going to be able to, are we pricing experiences out of normal people's things, and New York becomes so elite?
Well, I hope not.
I hope not too.
I hope not. what's interesting is that, like after 9/11, and even 2008 and 9, it's interesting because the market resets.
Yeah.
Right? And it's interesting if you look just at hotel rates in particular, after 2008 and 9, there was such a dramatic drop in hotel prices in New York City. And of course, that's one of the initial barriers people always throw up is, oh, New York is too expensive, certainly from a hotel perspective. But that changed after the recession in 8 and 9. And in reality, 10 years later, even up to last fall, in terms of real dollars, the hotel community had not actually recovered rate parity to where they were in 2008. So I think we're going to go through another one of those cycles. You're certainly see it. Rate takes time to rebuild, much to the chagrin of hoteliers, because they are under pressure for costs as well. And I mean, just using them as a benchmark, you can apply that to the airline industry as well. You can apply it to events, and I think the American consumer in particular is going to recognize that they're going to have to pay a premium to a degree for their safety in that sense. It'll be interesting to see how that conversation unfolds.
Do you think, both of you, do you think that the things we're doing for safety are going to be a permanent part of the timed entrances into events and pre-function space that allow people to spread out more and changes in the capacity issues? That's going to change everything. We have to retool an entire mindset, if not an industry.
Yeah. We'll have to approach our event production in a different way for sure.
Yep.
And I think it's going to be that way for a lot longer than the time that we're going to have. People are they're going to want that experience, right? Being not entirely altruistic, when I attended this event in New Jersey, it's quite nice actually, not having to really vie for elbow space on my chair. I had some, my own kind of little space on the lawn, and I really enjoyed a nice show, and I was outside, and there was no one around me. And,
you had the
I kind of had my little outdoor, living room space. It was quite nice, but that came at a cost. It certainly came at a cost, and that cost is borne a lot by the producer in this case, because they're trying to continue moving forward, right? They need to stay afloat, and doing nothing's not an option for them. So they found a way. Right, they found a way to produce work, but they're doing it certainly at a premium. I'm paying a premium to go to that experience, and not everyone can do that. And so, how do we make them accessible?
Well, the great evener now is everybody's talking about hybrid events. They're talking about virtual events. Is that going to be the equalizer in a sense? Are hybrids here to stay? What do you think?
Well, I think we had hybrids before.
Yeah, but we haven't had hybrids that were people felt comfortable that this was not just a nice little add-on. Now people think of it as they're doing whole benefits on this. Will that end up being death by PowerPoint? The idea that we're going to be so sick of that, and that can you create that same experience? Can Maya Angelou come through the computer and let you feel it the way you feel it here when I feel it, like, your energy?
I don't think so. Yeah, I mean,
Fred, that's what we're selling about New York.
Yeah, it is absolutely what we're selling. And I mean, who knew we were living through the age that we were living in, where everything was just so, so open. It is a complete shift in our mindset. And I am confident that people are going to crave those in-person events again. And those in-person experiences, you cannot replicate that. But I do think the hybrid model is going to be here to stay. I think in many ways, what a lot of organizers have found is that, engagement in many cases has gone through the roof. There are a lot of variables for that, but I think people have found that the opportunity to engage, we see it in our board meetings, we've certainly seen it in our committee work and the meetings we've had with the membership here in New York, that we have greater participation now than we did when it was in person.
Well, they're not traveling.
And they're not traveling. Less to do, I guess.
It may not be, which on one hand it's great, on the other hand,
good thing. I don't know if that's a good thing, but I think people will, have finally broken down some technology barriers and are comfortable engaging in a way online. I mean, I remember how awkward it was my first Zoom call. I had never really adopted that before. I resisted. I was a holdout. I preferred the in-person, and it took me a while to get comfortable with it. And now it's, like everything, it becomes second nature. But nothing's going to replace in-person experiences.
With that said, thank you guys so much for this conversation. It's inspiring to hear you, and we want it to be inspiring to the people listening, so that they realize that they're in a really important industry. Sometimes we have a self-esteem issue in our industry, and we're doing really important work, and people have to know that and know how important this is, not only to the economy, but to the lives of the people that are sitting in the audience.
Yeah, it's true. I was going to say, people may have taken the industry for granted in the past, but their lives were richer because of it.
Yes.
And I think they're seeing that now, and I think that is going to help see us through to the other side. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the future too.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, David.
So today we have Amber Guild, who's the president of T Brands from the New York Times. Welcome, Amber.
Thank you for having me.
We're on this incredible stage at the Times Center that I've seen so many events that have given me goosebumps. I'm sure you have too.
Oh, absolutely. It's so wonderful to be back here.
Yes.
And to both be able to be sitting in the audience, but also now to be sitting here on this stage.
Yes, we're being very careful today.
Yes, very careful.
It's the first day back at school.
It is definitely the first day back at school.
So tell us
and learning how to have intimate conversations at 6 feet.
Yes, a lot of, and the idea with no mask, we can actually see each other's body language more.
Yes, that helps.
That's kind of interesting while it's safe. So now there's this whole new wrinkle, which is why we are having this discussion.
That's a good word, a wrinkle.
Is a new wrinkle. And that safety becomes one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Because we need to get people to feel safe in order to come to events or participate in life.
Yes.
So what are some of the key measures that the New York Times is taking to ensure your venue here that we're here talking about is safe to host in-person events so we feel comfortable?
Yeah, no, so I'll talk specifically to the Times Center.
Times Center.
So the Times Center, I mean, one of the very first things we did is we started working immediately with consultants because we want to make sure that we're getting expert points of view on how to make sure that we're doing this in the most safe way possible. So we've been working with our consultants and we've developed health and safety standards. And since August, as soon as obviously following the guidelines of New York City, since August, we've been actually able to operate this space as a sound stage. And part of that process was making sure that we were doing temperature checks as soon as you walk in. We're mindful of the entire guest experience. So from the coat check, to walking to the bathroom, to where you can sit, right? We're making sure everything is within the right space and the right guiding lines, that we have the hand sanitizer, thinking through every aspect of the guest experience, as well as the experience for our clients who might be shooting here, making sure that all of the safety standards and procedures are in place.
Everyone that I know is trying to figure out how to go into the virtual world.
Yes.
And what was the journey? What was your journey in trying to figure this out?
So I will not forget the day in March. We were actually in my office when we were, myself and our Times Center and our NYT Live team were having that moment of, I think this may be the last day we're physically in this office. And up in my office, I actually had on my whiteboard was our event calendar and all of the events we had planned for the year, all of the live events we had planned for the year, some of them outdoors, some of them indoors, and looking at that board, looking at what was happening in the world and thinking, wow, we're gonna have to pivot this very quickly. I think everyone uses now the word pivot more so than they ever thought they were going to. And so from that moment, I think the very first thing we realized we had to do is let's bring together a cross-functional task force of people throughout our building to really figure out how do we do this the right way that's going to be incredible for our audience and meaningful for our audience, as well as stay true to our journalism. So the very first thing is we brought together a task force from our marketing team, our newsroom, our advertising team, our NYT Live team, and our Times Center team. And we said, okay, our mission at the New York Times is to seek the truth and help people understand the world. And we've always looked at our events as a way to do that in really engaging and thoughtful ways, knowing it now has to be virtual. How do we make this work? What can we do? How can we ensure that every one of our experiences can deliver on that? And obviously, I'm a little biased, but I am so incredibly proud of what the team has and continues to produce around our work here. From day one, yes, it went immediately, as most people did. We went immediately to, okay, it just, let's go online, let's go into kind of the Zoom webinar. Since then, though, this team has been experimenting with how we really bring to life our journalism virtually. And so, yes, we still have weekly calls, but we also have theatrical journalism. We also have pre-recorded, we have more experiential events that have been engaging audiences in ways that I don't think we could have immediately imagined in March. And now it feels like the world is our possibilities. It's filled with new ways to connect with our audience.
What do you think is going to happen with the event industry? I mean, right now we're having some challenges.
Yeah, no.
How do we bring it back in safely, and will it be the same?
Yeah, will anything be the same? we could do even a bigger.
That was a gimme.
Yeah, I was gonna like we could do a much bigger conversation around will anything be the same? I think it's gonna change. It's gonna evolve. Just like even as we're thinking about what will it look like for all of us to return to work, right? And could that then evolve? I think it's been a tough, unexpected year for the event industry, absolutely. My only counsel is that we have to keep in mind who we're creating for and why we're creating. And if we keep that as our guiding light, then, let your imagination go, let your creativity fuel those ideas, and perhaps where we end up by 2022 is in a way more even interesting and engaging place. But yeah, it's been a tough year for events. I think it's definitely going to get better as we go through 2021. But I think events will have to continue to really ideate around obviously safety and health being the number one important thing. But then how can you make it more experiential? How can you make it more about the feeling of it, whether it's through the screen or whether it's in real life?
So today we're just going to talk about the practical aspects of events. We're going to talk about how catering has changed, how communicating safety has changed, and how events are really, Carmen, you're going to be our sort of how it translates into events.
All right.
Okay. So why don't we start this year and talk about, you have this thing called the Essence Festival.
Yes.
How the hell did you do it this year?
Oh, great question.
That's the broad stroke.
Yeah, when COVID hit, after the onset of COVID, we were really kind of challenged. We were saying to ourselves, okay, this event.
I don't think you were alone.
Oh, no, I was by myself when I was planning it, no. But on a larger scale, this is an event that, draws about 500,000 people, or more than 500,000 people. And so thinking about how to move that was a kind of an eye-waking moment.
Tell us what you do. I'm going to interrupt you guys too.
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
Just want to be upfront. I'm not rude.
Yeah. So just kind of quickly in a nutshell, we literally looked at everything that is at festival and what could translate virtually. I mean, we sat down across all the departments and came up with a multi-platform solution, strategy.
Virtual.
Virtual. Because
but you went right to virtual. I mean,
we went right to virtual.
Did you think about postponing because you thought maybe it would be over?
Actually,
did that last like 5 seconds?
It's like 5 seconds because we had already activated virtual already. So as soon as March hit, we started.
Did you plan virtual before the crisis?
No. Well, we already had virtual because we are in the virtual space. We are in the virtual space already.
Yeah.
But in terms of moving our in-person events, we started early, and we started in April. Right. So we were already kind of were prepared.
Right.
Just on a larger scale, this is much bigger.
Right.
Much bigger.
So your title, it was interesting. Carmen Jones, Experiential Director and Growth Lead at Essence Communications. What did that mean? And now what does it mean?
I know, right? It's really about taking the verticals that I'm responsible for and finding out how to grow them.
And what verticals are you responsible for?
I lead beauty and fashion.
In the world of selling to those companies and editorial on those companies?
Experiential only, on the experiential side.
But so you've had to figure out how to bring those things alive.
Absolutely.
To add the Maya Angelou to them.
Absolutely. To make them just as powerful they are as they are in person, which, these events, we draw a lot of people. So it is a bit of it's a big feat.
And so how did you accomplish that virtually?
Well, I think the bonus for us is we are content experts. I mean, that's what we do. So it's really just translating content because people come to festival for the content. So it really was saying, okay, we're in this unprecedented time. So how is COVID affecting our audience? How is social injustice affecting our audience? So, and they were asking for this information. So we just built content around it.
And what kind of content? Like what was an example of how your content shifted from live event?
Well, the irony is it's just for our stage moments, it didn't change. You know, we just went virtual because we have a lot of stages at festival.
Yeah.
And so we are able to deliver that content in those conversations and panels. It also, I think the bonus is that you're able to do a larger reach. It's global now. You know, so maybe it was more about, okay, we've got to find a speaker who can fly in. Now it's, hey, do you have time?
Right.
So I actually saw the benefits of being able to select from a larger pool of speakers.
So now you'll never go back to the traditional way.
Oh no, as soon as it's possible, I'm sure we will come back.
But is there better sponsorship dollars and things like that with the broader reach? Or is it more profitable?
I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to say because they're really looking at their reaches, their touches, you know, the brand exposure, if that's people that are virtual or the people that are actually in person.
Yeah.
To them, it's looking at the number of people that we can engage. And, you know, our in-person events do gather large numbers.
They do. Give us the sizes.
Well, example, the Essence Festival is over 500,000.
500,000 people come to that, and over how many days? What is it?
Explain
to people what it feels like.
Well, last year it went was for 5 days. Yeah. So we have activations that start from the morning into the late night. Everything from, we have speaking, performances, we have community fair, community activities. So we really we're really engaged in New Orleans. Like we are a true partner of the city.
You're fantastic for the economic development of the city.
Absolutely.
They love you.
Absolutely, and we love them.
Let's use a festival as sort of the base point. And Glenn Rabbach is SVP and Creative Director at Duggal Visual Solutions. You're now very much more important in terms of visual communications to keep people safe. We were sitting here with all of these decals and things like that to say that this is 6 feet. How do you approach, you know, a project, let's say a festival or an event of any type? What's different now? What should the people who are listening know about this visual communications as a way to help people stay safe?
It started initially with the Empire State Building reaching out to my team. And we all went into sort of that blue sky mode of where there are no limits, how to lay out that space, how to communicate more with iconography, typography, clear, friendly ways for people to social distance. Even the Time Center, we laid out every type of scenario from a banquet to almost a trade show type of environment, to a theater in the round, to kind of force social distancing, and found that good design, and if you go back to the base of design, it in effect will create harmony and kind of force social distancing. So like the New York Times, for example, we laid out a very simple signage that said what we expect from you and what you can expect from us.
And what is that language? What's the voice of that language?
So it was literally to tell people they'll create a safe environment, they'll sanitize the environment, they'll lay out spacing on the seats, they'll give you a very easy cues to follow for seating and for catering, be it a QR code or whatever you're going to use to completely make an event viable, but at the same time, you're asking for people to wear a mask, to maintain distancing on their own. Very simple ask in turn for to have a safe environment that you can come back to.
But there's a huge difference. I was reading a lot of in the old days stories about how hoteliers would tell you to take your towels and put them leave them on the floor, or if you wanted to get them washed or put them up.
Now you don't even get hotel service
now
in
you don't get it anymore. But
you're on your own.
But the language in which they communicated was, if you say, do this, people don't do it. So how do you...
Well, the tone that we're taking is more in terms of partnering with the the guests or the.
Like what does that look like? Is it like I know that in the hotel thing it says others have been doing this, as opposed to do this.
I mean, some of the language was just literally to ask them the mandatory wear a mask, to just maintain that social distancing, just soft language, a lot of iconography, a lot of pictures and graphs, more universal language. As if you travel, everything's more universal.
How do you prevent glaze over? Do you have to change these things up a lot? Or what's the sort of thinking in terms of, because once you go to a grocery store, you just sort of, you don't even see it anymore. Or you go to a venue. Do you have to refresh that kind of thing?
So, I mean, if we're kind of force queuing people so that there's only one area that perhaps you need to check in, sign a waiver, do a temperature check, you're not even going to enter the space at that point.
Right.
And then when it came down to events, there's got to be a place where you drop your belongings, and there's got to be visual indications of where you're supposed to go next. So it's just large-scale signage, clear typography, a lot of clear icons, and just soft language of just asking everyone to partner.
Are you seeing any new things crop up recently that people are asking to do?
A lot of technology. So a lot of people are asking for every type of thermal scan or every type of like consent form, anything that will. We also do a lot of retail. So we did all the DR stores that were reopening. Apple's one of our biggest clients. So we're working on a project right now to make them a little more COVID friendly. That's kind of confidential.
Does thermal scanning work?
It gives you an indication if somebody has a deviation within a couple of degrees, followed up by either a handheld or like a swab that you put under your lip. But it's a very quick, rapid way and a very friendly way to get people in.
Are you, as the communications in terms of the future testing, I guess you have to be on top of that all the time. Like if we do fast testing and we start doing more testing, there's got to be stuff at festivals. I mean, that's a whole long line.
Yeah, but there's technology too where you can literally far field, like literally scan the entire crowd. There are also some sort of Hitler compliance. And, yeah, so there's a lot of companies that have some concern about scanning out a crowd and taking their temperature.
Yeah, there's a lot of privacy issues.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Shaun. Shaun, you are the Vice President of Sales for Great Performances, which is not an arts company, but it is one of the greatest catering companies in New York City.
Thank you.
How is the food business changing and the experience of the food business? And because you guys do more than catering, you're basically doing entire events. But what has changed in your world that is so significant that you had to reimagine everything?
Well, I think it really starts with diversification. The good news is people still want to eat.
They want to eat.
They'll always eat. On a lesser degree, people still want to get together and celebrate. But even before we get to the celebration point of it, people still want to eat. So it's finding those revenue streams, those ways to stay active by servicing people with food. Does that mean packaged deliveries of food? Yes. And I think there's been many an article written about it. The expanse of what our options are have reduced to a sort of finite amount, but I definitely believe that in our industry there is such creativity and innovation that something is going to come along that we haven't even yet seen. And that's really what we've been experiencing along the way. Every pivot, the overused word.
Pivot is the most overused word in the English language today.
Right, has been generated by some pain point or some need that had to be fulfilled.
So let's go back to next year's Essence Festival. You've been just hired to create a liquor spirit bar situation. What does the new bar look like?
Well,
have you thought about that?
Let's say that this festival is in New York City.
Yeah, let's say. Because yeah, I know you're not going to go to New Orleans for this one, but let's just pretend that we're going to use Carmen's events as kind of the model.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
The use case.
I mean, one of the actual, one of the points, and actually you were touching upon it, Glenn, with your language about what goes into the printed materials that communicate to people. Same thing on our end is when we discuss with people, it's clarity. And with my team, it's been as being as upfront as we can with the rules as best we know them, as best they've been interpreted. And we all know that we've been moving through phases. The rules have been changing and adapting. There's appeals here, appeals there.
Will a bartender have to actually, will the bartender basically make the drink and give it to the person?
So yes, so to your point, bars, actual bars where guests are being exchanged with a drink are not currently permitted. They can walk up to the bar, they can ask for a drink, but they must take a seat and have it served to them.
What about your visioning of when we are up and running? You're still probably, people are still going to be a little squeamish about just taking it. What are you going to do to make it cool and hip and COVID friendly?
Right. Well, I think the bigger concern to the co-check issue too is the points of congregation, those little pockets of congregation.
Waiting online for the drink.
Right, waiting in line for the drink, which is previously to COVID was always a point of aggravation, but now it's also a point of a health threat.
Right.
I think, I really do think that in-person service, guests being brought drinks, is the best way to go about it. I mean, it's a real fine balance. We're going to be entering potentially a dramatic economic slump. So can we really afford to put more service onto an event?
Is it economic?
Is it
the economics?
Right.
All right, what about the buffet? Is the buffet dead in the future? Is the mashed potato bar gone, which I don't mind?
The buffet has made it through centuries of food service. I cannot imagine that it is officially dead, but
it's not, you got to rethink the buffet.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
What do you do? How do you serve, you can't do group eating. You're not going to, nobody's going to.
Right, I mean.
I don't think at the Essence Festival, I think that picnics are changing. Everything's going to change, right?
Everything's changing.
At least for a while.
Yeah, absolutely, and family style with that as well. I think people would rather have their own plate of food and not have to turn to their neighbor and share it with them, no matter how much they know them or love them.
Right.
Buffets, I really think people want transparency in food, and I think we were headed that way anyway. People want to know.
What does that mean, transparency in food?
Well, so they want to know how their food is sourced. They want to know how their
yes.
food is prepared. They want to know who's preparing their food. I think people pleasure in that experience, but they also really relish knowing. And so I think the buffet, the buffet of a table of food that's been sitting out for Lord only knows how long and how many people have come to it, I really feel that we're a long ways away from reviving that. But I do think that food stations, food experiences will. Is
French service dead for now?
I would say likely. Yes,
yeah, not going to come back.
At least for you.
I guess you got, What about?
Listen, if I had a crystal ball.
Yeah, we're looking for you for the crystal ball.
Yes, that's
You're thinking. You guys are thinking about it. These guys are trying to figure out what the hell to order, or what does a box lunch look like today?
Right.
And is the box lunch safe? Is that the future?
Yeah, well, fortunately, there's been enough news to report that you're less likely or not at all to contract COVID through food. So that obviously
it's a little safer than it was when we were wiping everything down.
Exactly. So with that, I think a packaged lunch makes perfect sense, and that's really the world that we've moved in for the fall is curated kits, and a lot of people are doing this, but it's a great way to stay in touch with our clients, and it's creating some organic experience to what they're trying to put forward, and it's kits of food, snacks, beverages, swag, whatever we can put in there to create a moment that someone home can experience and enjoy.
Or eventually in a live experience, you think? Or you think it's going to?
I think there's going to be a lot of crossover. Just like I believe hybrid will cross over, I think this will as well.
Absolutely.
What about the hors d'oeuvre? Is that dead? Is the pig and blanket gone?
It's not. Oh gosh, that will never go away. No, and in fact, right now the ruling is people cannot stand up while eating because they have to remove their mask, and that's just not permitted.
Right.
But I think once that's permitted, absolutely, I think you'll see little cloches and little coverings for food. Maybe the past food is also packaged. I don't think bite size is going away.
But that brings up the idea of the reception. Will the reception be the same? Will the holding room for the pre-function space have to change? Will there be timed entrances? Mm-hmm. Will invitations change? Will you guys change the way you do that, right? Would you do that in a live event?
Absolutely. You're seeing it now where there's staggered timing of events, and it's something that's been going on for a long time. But I think obviously it's going to be more in the forefront now.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's really understanding the audience, because we can speculate a lot, but in all honesty, there are a lot of people who are soon yearning to return to in-person, and who are willing to be, risk takers or risk neutral.
But do you think that these things we were talking about are still going to be part of your budget in many cases, or your thinking, or do you think you're going to push harder to go back to a more normal times, or it may take a while to do that?
I don't think we're going to have a normal time. I think I think all these safety protocols say something about things that we probably need to be doing for a very long time. And so it's kind of looking at how we can integrate new innovative ways, because there's always going to be someone who's skeptical. There might be someone who said, oh, I don't think this thing is ever going to go away. So I believe that it's just an innovation of it. I think this is what the challenge is for everyone here now, is how do you innovate in this new normal that I foresee happening for quite some time.
Do you believe that we have a catering company we work with, we have the signage and the photography and all that. Do you think that the medical advisor is going to become as core to a organizer as catering and things like that?
Yeah, it's probably the first person at the table.
Yep.
And it's about confidence of the audience.
Right.
Because we can set up safety protocols. They have to see them, right? They'll have to see the things that you're doing. And now you have to put them on your website, because people are going to research, I'm sure, before they attend anything now.
And how do you give them the confidence that you know what you're doing? Because there's a lot of people that are just going to put up websites and they don't know. And also they don't have the money to actually run an event effectively, because a lot of times we're very entrepreneurial. Right. I think everyone understands what entrepreneurial means when we come to events. You put up a sign and people attend, but you have to now make sure that you've got the right procedures and processes in places.
Right. I mean, like I said, it's probably first and foremost starts with the signage and letting people know on the website what you're doing. And it might even involve showing pictures of what you're doing, what the situation will look like.
Visual communications.
Floor plans, because people want to see that you are doing what you say that you're going to do.
Because you're not going to be able to get insurance unless you do all this.
Exactly. And we don't know how the evolution of the state mandates and protocols and things, things that you'll have to pass to execute an event as it evolves. But I think they're going to have to see it. Then you have the trust factor. If your audience trusts you.
Trust is the whole game.
It's, if they've trusted us at Festival for 25, 26 years, I believe they know that we have their safety in mind, and we absolutely do, which is why virtually we had Essence. So
your brand, the brand becomes, trust is the
Trust
holy
is a part of the
grail.
brand. If they don't trust you, nothing that you're delivering is going to be of value to them.
I interviewed this doctor recently who said that, with mask wearing and things like that, that people don't realize when you go to an event in flu season, the whole place gets the flu. You go on an airplane, the whole place gets, so the mask wearing even for that is now going to come. We now understand respiratory diseases in a way that could change how we approach seasonal things like that too. So it's not going away anytime soon, and it's the best way to solve the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, we're really following the experts.
We're following the experts.
Because, I'm not an expert.
Who knew you follow the experts?
Got to follow the experts because, they're going to tell you what you need to do to be safe.
So why don't we end on a note of each one of us tell us about what you're excited about this new innovation that's happening. Like this was awful news for us, but what is the silver lining? Let's start. You want to start with the silver lining?
I think one big silver lining is the expansion of audience, because in a virtual world, you start being creative on a whole nother level. And for those who, like myself, who've been in the event business for a long time, you kind of begin to do some similar things over and over again. But now you're forced to use the technology that's available. And it seems like every day there's a new technology coming out, which is very exciting. And now we're really looking at the larger audience. Before, let's say at Essence Festival, you're looking who shows up. But now it's who's watching. And I'm really excited about the global aspect of what we're delivering now.
Do you think when people view something virtually, you're going to get the FOMO effect that would get them to want to come to a live experience? You think it's just advertising for more of it, right?
Well, there's that. I mean, we have so much footage and so much content from the festival, so we'll have a virtual event, but we'll also show you what it's like to be in person. So Of course, that might scare some people when they see the number of people, but
exactly.
obviously.
We'll just tell just our friends, just your friends are going.
But as the safety
Carmen's
measures
friends
come
are
into
going to go
play.
gathering
Exactly.
New Orleans.
Yeah.
Let's go to Glenn. What is your silver lining, and how do you think that this is going to?
I think we've started to examine more of even like we do a lot with interfaces, programming, touch, and the whole world of a touch screen. Nobody wants to touch a screen anymore. So we do it in just about every beauty brand and all the retailers as well. So we started to get a little bit deeper in terms of how do you interact with technology now. So we're doing a lot more with voice prompting, waves, which seems to there's a lot of air touch and things like that. I think it's challenging us to be better on the technology end.
Right. So there's room for geeky people.
There is, even all the way down to like Dior or any of the other, or Sephora. How do they sample cosmetics now? You're not going to touch anything anymore. You're not going to put a cream on anymore. So there's so many different ways of delivering fragrance now, or pre-packaging samples now, and the endless ask of technology. I don't think their day goes by.
Well, it's the integrating it into the live experience. Seems like you're sort of bailiwick.
Yeah, on a regular basis now, and just literally eliminating any need to touch any device for now.
Right. Shaun, what is your silver lining in the industry that you represent?
Well, I mean, so much of what we do really depends on that in-person contact.
Yeah, it's hard to do F&B virtually at this moment.
The technology component of F&B is
technology is not your friend at this moment.
It's challenging. But already you were starting to see some waves of technology with automat style food service and things like that would allow for the technical function of food delivery, but still allow for a space for a person to be there and create a human moment. So I think we'll move a lot towards that. For me, the silver lining is resetting the clock. I'm hoping that we can see a different rhythm, perhaps, to the event flow. The event season before this year was probably one of the biggest, the greatest, most oversaturated. So it's an interesting examination of that time period and seeing what we were really taking for granted and what was really becoming maybe a little out of control even, and bringing it back to what really matters. And I know we've really focused on service as our core. We've really re-examined it and really focused on it.
And one last question on training. You have lots of workers that go work events. I guess you have to change everything about how you train people and how you communicate to all of your staffs how to do this. Yeah, it's a big component of learning.
We have, we've been fortunate through this period of time. We've been able to stay active with some of our personnel. So they've definitely been involved in the conversations around protocol. But I mean, we have in a good season, we have a large working staff, and so yes, we need to continue that communication. And there's so much more learning too, besides the health and safety component that we've experienced through 2020, that we're starting to chip away at as well. It's a great time to really focus on those issues.
This is the time. It's actually the time to build your intellectual capital, as I've learned, and
yes.
because when we're drinking from the fire hose, you're just spending it. So you might as well invest in yourselves, everybody.
Absolutely.
This is the time to learn so that you can use what you're going to learn and listen to what other people say.
Absolutely.
So anyway, so thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Great. So we're excited to have Philip Himberg and David Macy with us. They're from MacDowell, which is the nation's leading artist residency program. They nurture artists, and they offer creative individuals of the highest talent, an inspiring environment, which they can produce enduring works of the imagination. And they have been very careful to create a work environment that's safe. And the biggest fear today is fear. So I want David and Philip, how did you guys approach this year's program in your artist residency? I don't know who wants to take that.
Well, I'm going to let David speak about the fact that we will be reopening the actual campus later in October. But I'll start by saying that in March, on March 12th, I believe it was, we had a pretty much full house of artists in residence, as we always do, 365 days a year in Peterborough, New Hampshire, and made the decision, which was very difficult, to close the campus that day, as many other institutions closed around that time. And David was leading the sort of exodus of our residents out, which took about a week and a half. We didn't push anyone out the door. We did it with grace, I think. And then we had a series of conversations about what does it mean to be a residency without residents. And because our pillar of support, our main pillar of support, is to make sure that artists are provided for, as you said, time and space to do their work. It took us a few weeks, maybe a few months, to figure out a couple of ways of doing that. While we were not in residence, we went virtual, as many other institutions did. And there were two parts to that. One was that our website was completely revitalized to create a kind of conversation among our fellows, our alumni. And then secondly, we conceived of something called Virtual MacDowell, which I'm happy to talk about in more detail later on as we have this conversation. But I'm going to turn it over to David to talk a little bit about, the decision to actually reopen the doors and how that came about.
For me, one of the key learnings has been with something like this that does elicit, as you started the program with, fear is the most prominent feature of the current era, is actually working through the for a staff, getting the staff to work through their own concerns with each other and arrive at a common understanding of what safety looks like. Without doing that, I could have worked with a medical provider and just said, this is the reopening plan and now we're going to do it. But I think it would have fallen on its face without the investment of time. And again, that sort of going through it multiple times in order for people to test their own ability to trust in the plan.
Why don't we move on to Philip? One of the things we know in the event industry is that the virtual event is becoming a must-have, which is going to, after the pandemic, is going to create a rise in the hybrid world of the combination of both the virtual and the live experience. How are you preparing with your virtual world for the hybrid world, or are you?
We very much are preparing for the hybrid world. One thing we actually looked at was what were the rituals of MacDowell that we could translate on screen and what were not the rituals. For example, dinners were very important, that we provide food. We couldn't do that for 8 sessions, but we did it for 2 sessions. We went to each of the artists and asked what restaurant in their hometown could we actually, provide dinner for them. So for the first and I think the final session, they were provided with dinners. And if they had families and children, we provided dinners for the families so that it was possible for everyone to have a moment together. We also sent everybody through the mail, through snail mail, a box with the famous MacDowell picnic basket, which everyone remembers. It's delivered to your doorstep at lunch every day. And in that basket was not only recipes and books from fellows and what have you, but actually a little garden pot of dirt from our garden and seeds. So you had a little piece of the land of MacDowell as well. So, and people loved that. They loved the swag and the stuff they got. So we've tried to figure out ways in which to find, equal measure of what it is about MacDowell, what it is about the experience emotionally that can translate to a Zoom platform.
It sounds like MacDowell management is going through their own residency program to come up with ways to enhance the art of gathering. And it also sounds like one of the things I'm hearing from you is that to create a safe program, you are collaborating with your team so that they're basically the people that are able to enforce the program because they understand it, which is a lot of times the problem when you see all these safety measures, but half the people aren't following them because the staff doesn't know how to advocate for that. So I applaud you for that. Does that make sense? I mean, it sounds like you took a really smart way of thinking about this.
Well, I'm very proud of the MacDowell staff and the MacDowell board. And David has been meticulous in his communication and in his the genesis of this whole safety protocol. It's been really amazing to watch. I think that's true. Communication can never be enough. That's what I've learned on this job.
Right. Anyway, well, thank you for your time. We're learning every day, because the whole idea of our industry is we need to peek over the fence to see what other people are doing, because you can't get into, like, we all want to be residents at your MacDowell, but we can't. But thank you for sharing some of the things that you've learned through this very innovative period. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Our pleasure.